Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, one of those games that, especially as us Michigan fans, but as a college football fan in general, you had circled really since the beginning of January. Texas going on the road, playing Michigan week 2 in the big house. A little bit of a roster battle going down. Going to go position group by position group, see how these two teams stack up. And Dill, not necessarily a prediction at this point yet, but kind of getting a feel for the talent level of both teams. These roster battles have been a blast to do. Very excited to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and all the deep dives that we've done in spring, Texas, Michigan, all the support y'all have shown. It truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, Texas fans, Michigan fans, let it fly in the comments section, whether you agree, disagree with the fellas. That's the beauty of college football. And Dill, really the beauty of doing these roster battles. The fans, a lot of passion in the comment section. We absolutely love it. And Dill, getting into Michigan, Texas, let's start with the most important position on the field, the quarterback spot. This one is probably one of the easier picks that we'll have. Quinn Ewers versus whoever is trotting out there for Michigan. How do they stack up here?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think there's some very obvious position groups for Texas on the offensive side of the ball. Quarterback is certainly one of them. I mean, just how good Quinn Ewers has become in his development over his college career. He's just a guy you're really starting to believe in. You're starting to see him get mocked in that first round, probably where, again, maybe you wouldn't have thought so 2 years ago, but he's really made his way up through this college ranking, and he's right up there at the top. So it's got to be that.
Yeah, and even as like a Michigan fan, like you look at Alex Orji, who's probably the projected quarterback one, there's just some questions there. A lot of Michigan fans very excited about what Alex Orji can bring to the table. But Dill, Quinn Ewers, we were talking about this a little bit the other day. I don't think a lot of college football fans realize the start of the college football career he had where he reclassifies, commits to Ohio State, comes to Texas, was playing really good in that year that he really should have been a true freshman from an age standpoint, gets banged up, rockier second bottom half of the, or I guess I should say second half of the season, if you will. And then in 2023, took a massive step in the right direction. If you're a Texas fan, like what does it look like with Quinn Ewers potentially taking another step? And again, what should be year 3 of college football for Quinn Ewers? I think for Texas, that's probably one of the more exciting storylines heading into 2024.
No, 100%. And that's kind of what gives you that hope. Like, I mean, they got a really talented team around him, and you do have that quarterback now that you're fully believing in what Quinn Ewers can be. Because last year you came in, you still had some questions just because how you mentioned the back half of the season really wasn't that great for Ewers. But you come in like you're very primed, and with him at the helm, like you very much believe.
You could say for Texas, they might have 2 quarterbacks that would be easily, maybe even 3 with Trey Owens, who looked very good in the spring game. I mean, Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, Trey Owens, name me a better quarterback room across the country than what Texas has cooking up. This is a loaded quarterback room. Got to give TS to Texas. I don't know if we'll get any Michigan fans fighting the boys on that one. Another one that's probably pretty easy one to go to, you look at the wide receiver room. Dill, I think I'm probably higher than most in terms of what this Michigan wide receiver room can be. Tyler Morris, Samaj Morgan, Freddie Moore looked pretty good in the spring game. Then you look at Texas and what they have. Isaiah Bond, potentially one of the top receivers in the country. You sprinkle in guys like Matthew Golden, Ryan Wingo, who looked phenomenal, Jonte Cook. It is a lot more firepower sitting in that Texas locker room.
No, I mean the Texas room's great. They got good experienced guys. They got a lot of high-powered young dudes. It's a really well-rounded out room. And Michigan, like they've made it pretty clear they want to be improving this room in the transfer portal. Hopefully it's not done, but again, there's not really much I think they can do to catch this Texas team. Just you've seen how they've recruited. I mean, the one caveat is Michigan, if you throw that tight end room into that pass catcher group, you probably start like that's where Michigan thrives. I mean, I think they have Colston Loveland, who's probably going to be the best tight end in the country next year. And then you have a guy in Marlon Klein who's coming up. And Texas has solid tight ends, but I just think at this point, I mean, you look at Loveland, he's the guy.
You see, blowing my spot there. I was going to include tight ends as a separate position to give Michigan an edge.
I was thinking maybe I should have, but
now you look at the tight end room. We can do that. I mean, Colston Loveland is the best tight end in the country heading into 2024. Again, I don't even think Texas fans would argue that. But you look at Texas, I mean, Amari Nyblack, we're really excited about what he can be in that Texas offense, but you give the edge to Colson Loveland in that tight end room. Though this is probably the closest one we'll have on the offensive side of the football, the running back room. Massive fan of CJ Baxter going into year 2, but also really big fan of Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullen, potentially Benjamin Hall. I'll put you on the spot first, and I think this is going to be the one that really gets the fans y'all fired up in the comment section. That kind of gets me a little bit excited. I'll put you on the spot here. Who you got? Texas, Michigan, and that running back.
The Texas fans are going to call me a homer, but I got to ride with Michigan. I mean, Donovan Edwards, you're still kind of waiting for him to truly break out, and he hasn't always had a shot because it's been the Blake Corum show in the Michigan backfield for the past couple years. But man, he's made some monster runs in some big games. I think Khalil Mullings very well complements him in terms of being able to run that more physical pounding style that Michigan wants to do it. And I mean, CJ Baxter certainly has an argument for the best running back on the field that day when Michigan and Texas take it. But I do think Michigan's maybe a little more complete. And I'm nothing against Jaden Blue. I just think that Michigan two-headed monster might be a little bit better than Texas just because, again, I think CJ Baxter, if he takes that step, might be the guy in this field. But I do like Michigan's depth and what they have going.
And I'm going to preface this with I love CJ Baxter. Loved him coming out of Florida at the high school range.
Awesome in the spring.
Awesome he is. You're probably right? He's probably the best running back on the football field. That being said, Dill, I don't want to read too much into the spring game. You saw Donovan Edwards finally get a little bit more downhill. That's what us Michigan fans have been kind of banging the table for during his tenure at Michigan. If you get that version of Donovan Edwards, that's decisive, that's seeing the game the right way. He is one of the more talented running backs in the country. And then I'll point out a guy in Khalil Mullings who, the former linebacker, I think he is extraordinarily underrated, not only to the national media, but quite frankly, some Michigan fans too, I think, sleeping on my guy, Khalil Mullings, who is a hammer in terms of being that physical running back that Michigan's looking for. I'll give the edge to Michigan too. Also could be a little bit of a homer pick. Now, Dill, you get to the offensive line.
We gotta take one on offense, right?
We took the tight end room too. Now you look at the offensive line and say, I am very confident that Michigan's going to have a very good offensive line. I think a lot of people in the national media are going to write that group off because they lost 6 guys to the NFL. I think a lot of Michigan fans know this offensive line is going to be very good in 2024. But you look at this Texas offensive line, guys like Kelvin Banks Jr., guys like DJ Campbell. Those are, Kelvin Banks Jr., kind of a top 10 prospect in the NFL draft. DJ Campbell, a guy that I think could be a first-round NFL draft pick. I'm a big fan of this Michigan offensive line, but we might be going up against one of, if not the best offensive line units. I'm probably going to lean Texas here.
I think you look at the offensive line kind of landscape. I think Texas certainly in the top 5. I think you could put them right up there with anyone just because you kind of look. This is an offensive line now that's played together, I feel like, for damn near 3 years. And they've been all playing as younger guys. DJ Campbell, Kelvin Banks playing as really young players. Connor Hayden's been playing with them for a while. So I think you've just kept this offensive line room together for a long time. You see them grow every year. I thought they looked good in the spring. I'm pretty confident that Cameron Williams is going to be a solid right tackle to fill in the one spot there. They're not returning. Again, I'm with you. Michigan, you just kind of believe will have a good offensive line every year. They've been doing that for the past handful of years, but Texas, you put them at number 1. I wouldn't argue with you.
And it's hard, even as Michigan fans, riders for the Michigan Wolverines here. It's hard to sit here and have 5 new starters on the offensive line and say we're better than Texas that returns all conference caliber guys. So you got to give Texas the lean on the offensive line. Now the fun begins because I truly think you're looking at 2 of the better defenses in the country. I think on paper that Texas offense, I don't think even Michigan fans are taking Michigan's offense in terms of the skill and on paper over Texas. The defensive side of the football, a little bit of a different story. 2 elite groups. This is also going to get people riled up in the comments section. Absolutely love it. The defensive line, Michigan, Texas. I know where I'm going. I'll give you the first word.
Yeah, I think Michigan's as good as anyone on the defensive line. So I'm obviously on Michigan. I think what they have on the inside with Will or Kenneth Grant, and Mason Graham.
Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable. I can't make that error. But those 2 are as good as it gets in the country, I think, especially Mason Graham. He's, for me, by far the best defensive lineman in the country. And then I think you're returning 2 guys who I don't think Like their numbers don't tell the story about what they were because they were mixing in with a couple of their pros last year. But you return those two on the edge. I think you're very comfortable. Michigan's front four, I think, is as good as anyone. I mean, maybe some depth, but like I think again, kind of what their offensive line's done, just reloading
No
depth.
sneaky, like you see Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant kind of mocked in the first round. Sneaky one, Derek Moore going into year 3. I mean, he's dominated since his true freshman year for Michigan. I think he's another guy that you could see working up into being a kind of a top 50 NFL draft pick. Texas defensive line is going to be very good. I do think there's a reason they've been aggressive in the portal, going after guys on the inside. You have some question marks about replacing some really good football players. We kind of talked about it. This Texas defensive line is still going to be very good. I guess I'll give my answer. I'm going with Michigan, but I'm giving Texas a little love on the defensive line. It's going to look a little different. I don't think they'll be as dominant on the inside of that defensive line like they were last year. Probably one of the better interior line duos that we saw in the country. I do think the edge rushers take a massive step in the right direction, right? You bring in Trey Moore from UTSA. Justice Finkley, look like he's certainly kind of putting it together. You know what you have with Barron Sorrell, Ethan Burke, Colin Simmons as a true freshman. I think for Texas fans, like a lot of people expect it to take a step back, but you look at the edge rushers and say, probably taking a step in the right direction if you're Texas on the edge as opposed to the inside. But I'm going Michigan on the defense.
Wilford Collins is a hammer. I feel like people kind of ignore the fact that he's really, really good. I mean, I know like Murphy and Sweat, obviously, as they deserve, got the credit, but you saw where they went in the draft. I mean, those two are studs. Alfred Collins is really good. I think they've got enough depth around him to, again, not like have big drop-offs. I don't have anyone really in Alfred Collins' league, I don't think, which is hard because he's one of the better guys. I think they did enough in the portal to make it good in the inside. It's not what it was last year, but really good. And obviously, as you said, that edge group is very good for Texas.
All right, going back to the linebackers, another really, I might go both ways depending on where you go. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Texas, Michigan linebacker room. Who you going with?
I mean, this is tough because I the way I kind of see it is they both have some real X factors in Anthony Hill, and then obviously on the Michigan side, Jayshon Barham. So you got two real difference makers, ultra versatile, can get after the quarterback, can play in space. I think Ernest Hausman, I trust a little bit more than any of the other Texas guys, but I think it's like really tight because again, I think Anthony Hill and Jayshon Barham, like take your pick. They're both up there with anyone. I just trust Hausman a little bit more. So
I'm going to have the same answer that I had for the Texas running back versus the Michigan running back. And that is Anthony Hill Jr. might be the best linebacker on the field come week 2. That being said, you take a look at who's 2, 3, 4 in the linebacker room. I kind of agree. Like, I think Jayshon Barnes, a guy that is really, really kind of under the radar at that linebacker spot coming from Maryland. And Ernest Hausman didn't get to play as much as I think we expected him to during that 2023 season. You go back to the true freshman year in Nebraska, really good football player. Outside of Anthony Hill Jr., you might have some question marks. Quite frankly, I wasn't super impressed with what I saw.
I don't necessarily think you have big question marks. I just think, again, because I do like Ben. I think he's a very good player. I thought Luafu played pretty good, frankly.
I like him out of high school.
So you have some guys for Texas, and frankly, it might be a little bit more deeper and talented. I just think your top 2 versus top 2, and that's kind of where these teams are going to play, as they're both kind of play that nickel role too. I just trust Michigan a little bit more because I trust Hausman a little bit more.
That one's razor tight too, but I think at least. Now you go to the secondary, and a little disclaimer for this: I think Texas has gotten way better in the secondary. And I think a lot of people are going to read into that spring game and say, "Oh, Texas is secondary going to be a weakness again." You take a look at the young cats that they have, and a lot of guys that were able to play a lot of football in 2023. I mean, you talk about Muhammad, Derek Williams Jr. You're bringing a guy like Andrew McCuba. It sounded like Gavin Holmes probably winning that other cornerback battle. You see Terrence Brooks transfer out. Still, that's a really good secondary. That being said, I look at Michigan. I'm going to put you on the spot again for this one. You probably have the best cornerback in the country, Will Johnson. That being said, you lose DJ Waller. You have some question marks about cornerback 2, potentially some question marks in the secondary as Rod Moore went down with the injury. I'll give you the first word here, Texas, Michigan in the secondary. Who you got?
I hate to do it to my Wolverines, but I almost think you might have to lean. And again, it's kind of weird because Texas secondary numerically was so bad last year. Obviously, you saw against Washington versus what Michigan did against Washington. It's not even close. But I'm looking. I think Makuba was exactly what they needed, a guy to steady the ship a little bit in the back. DJ Williams and Malik Muhammad are just such good players, such talents. I mean, there's part of me that thinks like maybe they need to like figure some schematic things out because you saw too many busts and some of those issues in playing the football. But man, they're wildly talented. I mean, it almost pains me to do it, but I almost like if I'm projecting it forward, Texas secondary, I think can play really good ball. In Michigan does have some questions. I know we kind of like some of the young guys that are coming up, but you do have questions outside of Will Johnson and Makari Page, especially with Rod Moore going down. If Rod Moore doesn't go down, I think it's pretty obvious it's Michigan. But again, you got some spots to fill. Texas can be really good there if they coach them well.
And
And
I'll fight you on this one. And I think it does a lot have to do with Will Johnson. You have a true cornerback, one that really can just take away a side of the field, take away a wide receiver. I think it makes the secondary so much better. And yeah, there are question marks at the cornerback 2 spot. There's a question mark at kind of how we're going to have one of the safeties and nickels. I think there's enough players that you feel good about. And you saw an elite group last year versus – I'll tell you this. I think Texas is probably one of the most improved secondaries that you see in the country, probably one of the most underrated position rooms that you see in the country. I think they got a lot better from last year. That being said, I'll lean with Michigan. I probably would have just fought you on it either way. You take Michigan, I probably would have taken Texas to fight you. That's what I would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. That's all we got, Dill. The line is 3.5 for Texas in Ann Arbor. We'll take a look at this game from so many different angles over the next couple months. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let us have it in the comments section, and we'll talk to y'all later.